Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening today. This is Will, and I'm really excited to have Doug Schantz on the phone. Doug owns Nellie Sports Bar in Washington, D.C., and if I'm right, Doug, you just celebrated your 13th anniversary in business?
It's actually 11, but close. It feels like 13.
Oh, what year did you all open?
2007.
2007. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I have to say, okay, so I probably could have I found it in the wrong place. I think I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and it said something about 2005, which is probably when you started working on Nellie's, I would guess.
It's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, that's it. So
2 years to open.
2 years to open, so 11 years. Well, congratulations. It's a tough business, and anybody that can make it over a decade, man, that's awesome. So congrats, and thank you for taking the time to talk today.
Sure, and thank you.
So so what were you doing prior to Nellie's? Were you in the restaurant business before you opened?
I was not. I actually worked in advertising. Right when I got out of school, I moved to Chicago and worked in a big agency there on Ace Hardware and worked with John Madden. They had just signed him up as a spokesperson.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty exciting. I made like $13,000 a year, but it was absolutely fascinating. And I was kind of his right-hand man, and I basically was in charge of making sure he was in the right place at the right time throughout the nation. Then I moved to New York City, which is kind of the center of advertising, and worked at Ogilvy and Mather on, what did I work on? AT&T, and then Chase Manhattan Bank. So all big agencies and blue chip clients, and zero experience in restaurants. I have never bartended in my life. I did work as a server in college. I've never cooked a meal in my life. Never owned a restaurant, and I'm not particularly good at sports. So all those things make for the number one sports bar in D.C., Virginia, and Maryland.
Well, you weren't blinded by everybody else's rules, I guess. But man, dude,
yeah.
I don't even know where to start with that. That's fascinating. So you had to get Matt around on his bus, right? Because he wouldn't fly.
Yeah, he would not fly. And then after a while, and I was very honored. I worked there for about 6 years, so he got to know me. And he also had two adopted sons that were as big as he was. Or is. And so I was also sort of in charge of taking care of them. He wanted them to be in the business, but they just kind of weren't cut out for it. So basically my job was to take them out afterwards and get them drunk, which took about 15 pitchers. And then when I wasn't there, he'd say, hey, where's that Doug guy, which I loved. So this was a good thing.
Man.
Yeah, it was a really cool experience, except for the money part.
Well, and I'm sure that then probably the money came in New York, but tell me about it, man. I mean, you're part of that's a huge organization that you're with in New York, and you have blue chip clients. So now you've got a place you've been, open 11 years, working on it 13 years, single location, totally different, pace of life, and certainly with no experience, man. Tell me more. I'm fascinated.
Okay, so basically what I did is I've always been a social guy, and I was in a fraternity in college, and I was the social chairman. You were supposed to be social chairman for one semester. I was social chairman for 3 years because we just had a lot of fun, and I always was with the most popular sororities and all that. So I did that once I got out of school. I'd host a lot of parties. I used to have Super Bowl parties. After I went to New York, I then moved to D.C. 23 years ago, and a lot of people would go to Rehoboth, and I would be the beach house host for like 25 people or what have you, and it just was in my blood to be a host and kind of entertain people. And I always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and in advertising, it's more unlike Chase Manhattan Bank or AT&T, which is very corporate. We had that creative slant. So, sometimes on a Friday, the creative people would be, drinking beers, doing all sorts of things. So that sort of helped me with my entrepreneurial spirit, but still kept the corporate background. So when I opened the restaurant, one of the things I told myself was I had like 4 or 5 distinct strategies, was to run it as a corporate business, to get up at 6 a.m., 6:30 when I would normally for my other job, hire managers that were good enough to close. And so I would work on Nellie's every day from 6 to like 7, 8 o'clock at night, like advertising hours. And then other people, I'd go in, but other people would close the place at 2 or 3 in the morning. So I wasn't exhausted, and I could really work on the marketing, the finances, just the overall aspect of Nellie's, getting people in there. And you just have to trust people. It's a completely different way than some owners, don't spend enough time getting enough sleep or whatever and marketing the business or tracking different things, inventory and that sort of thing. And I really kept on that aspect of it. So that's how I approached it. And in advertising, you have a group of people. I was the account manager. You have media, you have creative, you have production, you have that. So I just the same thing with kitchen and servers and managers. I just took that learning aspect and that approach and applied it to the restaurant world, and it worked. And plus, you had to have a good idea, and it was a good idea.
Well, you had a good tool set of skills and work ethic and work habits you learned in corporate America, and you married that with some entrepreneurial drive. So there you go.
Yep.
That's really cool that you're able to do that, and you're able to kind of shut yourself off in the evening and find, and have trust in people. And maybe that's, honestly, I wonder if maybe because you didn't have the experience that a lot of folks, that's what they kind of feel like they've got to control the situation. They've had enough people they've worked around they don't trust, so they don't trust.
Right.
And they work their ass off and work themselves to death, and you get burned out or whatever.
And, and another slant to that is I also didn't have a preference on, okay, we make the best shepherd pie, or, I'm a shepherd pie connoisseur, or I'm a huge local team fan, or what have you. And Nellie's really does all it's not focused on one team. It's not focused on one food aspect. And the one thing it's focused on is being friendly to everyone, especially moving from New York to DC. I experienced a lot of bars and restaurants where, it was like you were doing the server or the bartender a favor by handing them a $20 tip. And in Nellie's, that didn't fly. And actually, the first year, even though someone was very good or really good looking, all the things you want in that hospitality industry, if they were not nice people, they didn't work at Nellie's. And we have really nice people. And that's one of the things it's another strategy of mine is that, it's sort of like an instant cheers. You walk in and everybody knows you, treats you really well. And that worked too.
Well, I know you mentioned on your website, part of what you try to provide there is your display and that permeates through Nellie's is an infectious love of life. So that really goes to, I guess, the type of people that you're hiring there.
Right.
You can teach them to serve, but you can't teach them to love.
No,
people.
their personality. Yeah. Their personalities are personalities. And another, when I first started, I was not going to put up any neon beer signs from the major vendors, and now we're like the number one seller of several liquors and beers in the area. So nothing like that you saw at other typical bars and or sports bars. It was all I encouraged in the first 2 months for people to bring in pictures of them running a race, hanging out with their football guys, flag football team, doing a swim meet, whatever. And I put all those pictures up along with I told them to bring in their school banners. So there's no vendor advertising. It's all local, so that within 6 months it looked like it'd been there for 20 years, and people had just brought all this collective stuff, and people love to see that. It's just very friendly. And so, again, that was another strategy of just making it feel very personable and at home right away.
Now, you named it after your great grandmother and your great great grandmother, correct? Both named Nellie.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. What was the tie there?
Well, the tie there was when I was little. They're from Kansas, and they actually moved there in like 1850, right before the Civil War. It wasn't even a state. They moved from New York. They were somewhat wealthy family that started then there and lived 6 generations, department stores and all that sort of thing. They were very social. And so when I was little, I was brought up to respect your genealogy and your history of your family. And Nellie was a big name, obviously, because there's 2 women named that. So I always thought until I was about 10 that every great-grandmother's name was Nellie, because that was a Victorian name. So I identified with that. And then also as I grew older, if you were Nellie, you were might not be good at sports. If you were called, oh, he's so Nellie, he probably can't throw a football or what have you. And I thought, well, this is genius. No one else can own this because I can actually show that this is my great-grandmother. And it is perfect play on words for a sports bar. So in my marketing background, what you want to do is center on things that no one else can claim or say. And so one of the things we say are you Nellie enough? And no one else can claim that. And both by literally my grandmother and then also just in sports, it's ironic.
Man, I love that. And I love that you tell your story on your website. I'm always surprised when I find a restaurant that doesn't really have anything about their story. That really helps. I mean, from my perspective, it helps really connect you to the place and gives you a deeper level of understanding of what they're doing and sort of an emotional connection, which may or may not be tangible, but isn't that a really important part, don't you think, of particularly with independent restaurants, of having something
completely.
Yeah,
and it's it goes as far as now 11 years, but even 7-8 years ago, people became so protective and of Nellie's, and that they would come in if I had moved a banner to clean something or just rearrange the room. They're like, "Where did my banner go?" I'm like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!" So we had to we've kind of honed it down. We took down all the pictures and replaced them with newer ones, because then people started to love Nellie so much they started to take things. So they were like taking pictures off the walls and all that. And that's just when a place gets super busy and whatever and crazy or whatever as it goes through people's minds. But we still have all the banners, all the school banners are up. We have some major pictures, that sort of thing, but definitely I will hear about it if something is moved, which I think is fascinating and fabulous, that they take that much care in Nellie's as a regular customer.
Well, absolutely. And obviously you're still, you've got the one location, so the single unit economics had to work for you. Did you always plan on just having a focus on one location and focusing on what's happening inside your 4 walls and building an institution? Because, I mean, you've clearly done that there in Washington.
Yeah. So what my plan there was, we were out in the middle of, in D.C., the process of gentrification or claiming the neighborhoods back. I'd seen it in Chicago. I lived at 2500 North, and people didn't even live on the lake, in between Evanston and 2500 North. There were lots and lots of abandoned buildings. And that started to turn. And then I moved to New York City, and Ogilvy was at 49th and Broadway in Hell's Kitchen at the Pencil Building, which was one of the first tall skyscrapers they built since like the 80s. And because no one invested in the cities and no one's living there. And that Hell's Kitchen was truly Hell's Kitchen. It was really all the big buildings around were abandoned. You couldn't take clients out for lunch, anything like that. So the third time is a charm when I moved to D.C., and then it started to populate. Hell's Kitchen's really popular now. So when I got to D.C., I thought, okay, no more. I see this abandoned area below 16th Street. Nellie's is at 9th and U. I actually live at 6th and T in a place called LaJoy Park. So I bought a big house 20 years ago with abandoned buildings everywhere, and then started to spy on where I might want to open a Nellie's, and I opened it at 9th and U And many people told me, you're crazy. I'm not coming out here. And I said, no, you know what? Think of it as a destination bar.
There you go.
And it's only 6 blocks away from where everyone lives. And so that's right when 2007, Uber was becoming a thing, cabs. And within the first 2 months, there was just a line of Ubers and cabs up to Nellie's because we had a roof deck, which was a big draw, and it was a new cool thing. And it really started the neighborhood to revive, including a lot of the big towers that are there now would actually, and you can't pay for this in marketing, it would say, hey, parking space available, upgraded kitchens as a bullet point, and then another bullet point would be 1 block away from Nellie's. Okay, I win.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's where I thought I'm going to just try this, and it was a risk. I mean, it was busy right off the bat, but there's always risks in what you do. And then after like the first year, most restaurants fail. After the 5th year, a lot just give up because they're just tired. And I've gone through all those cycles where, it was tough constantly keeping it busy, but it's still just as busy as it was 3 or 4 years ago when we kind of hit our high marks.
Man, well, congrats on that. So you're at a point, it's actually interesting because we were right, schedule flies right at 11 years. What I always think about, what needs to stay the same and what needs to change as we go forward.
Right.
What are the core kind of foundational building blocks that we've, that can never change here, that we always have to build everything upon, but then what do we need to do going forward to get better? Is that something you think about a lot, Doug?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's so what I also did is I thought, okay, people in my bar, I'm going to have this very familiar place that when you walk in, and some people would describe it, they said, once I walk through the door, it's like getting a big hug. And I did the staples, too, of like, I knew that the clientele would drink tons of vodka. They'd love certain of just the regular type of beers. We don't do many at all, fancy drinks of martinis and specialty cocktails or whatever. We're just the basics. But with my research of going around and looking at the other sports bar, which were very few when I first opened up, doing really good food. So we have healthy salads. We have a really mixed menu that's appealing to people. We actually have people take out. We have people order and say, we're going to come pick up. I defy any other sports bar that does that on a regular basis. That's how good our food is. And just just hanging on to, okay, this is what we're going to offer. We're going to have a friendly atmosphere, all welcoming to, straight, gay, male, female, black, white, rich, poor. Everybody is welcome at Nellie's. We never charge for space. We don't have a rental fee. We never charge at the door. That was another strategy. All of these types of things so that it's open to everyone. And a lot has changed over 11 years. The client base, again, has sort of ebbed and flowed as the neighborhood changes. But I tell myself, too, my most loyal customers 4, 5, 6 years ago, through the 5 years that they've been coming, I don't think I'd go to the same bar for 11 years and spend, because there's so many more things to do in D.C. But they do not come quite as much, the very first group, but they still come back because they know that they can count on exactly what Nellie's is still about. So, yes, outside the changing factors, you have to not pay attention to them, but you have to also sort of stay true to your course so that people know that they can rely on something, and that's what they do with Nellie's.
Well, it feels like home. You feel like you can always go back, and it's consistent. It's there, and people need that, and they appreciate that and value that. So, what's the hardest thing about what you do?
Owning a restaurant. Well, it's just it took me 10 years. This is the 11th to get a really good management staff. That took a while. And just like in advertising, there was this slant of kind of crazy kookiness that, hey, it is work and we have to get this campaign out to whomever, and people would be playing around or drinking or whatever. Well, that is heightened to 100th degree in restaurant because you're dealing with liquor and you're dealing with cash and you're dealing with an industry that's not as consistent as corporate America. So people come and go. And honesty and, hardworking and just getting it. And now, after the 10th year, I have this really incredible staff. Many of my bartenders have worked there 8 and 9 years because they make more money than I do. And the kitchen staff has been there for 11 years. And very few restaurants can claim that type of thing. I mean, it's just something that has happened with Nellie. So it's the hardest thing is to make sure that you've gotten that right mix and to realize that at a moment's notice, it could change at any time. So it's just a lot of work. In corporate America, I had a paycheck. I knew I was going to get it every 2 weeks. You can't count on that. We could have a blizzard for a month and Nellie's would be closed. I don't know how the fourth nor'easter up in Boston, any of those businesses are going to survive.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. But also you had your weekends and, I work 7 days a week. So that's all part of owning it. But the fact that I own it, there's some things I would have changed at the beginning, just, with management and hiring some people or my approach to that and what I learned, or buying certain things for the restaurant or laying it out in certain ways and what I learned after a while, how it works now. I did when I went out there, I told the owner of the building that after 5 years, I'm going to put a lot of money into this. I want a clause that says I can purchase the building from you because I don't want that hanging over my head. And at the 5th year, and he happened to live in Israel. He's a good guy. He honored that. And so I actually not only own Nellie's the business, but I own Nellie's the building. And that was super smart to do. So,
very shrewd, man. Good move. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because that lease negotiation seems to be such an issue when I talk to a lot of owners about, hey, we were here for 15 years and all of a sudden, new people bought the building and they're just running us. We can't afford the lease.
Right. It's a triple lease, right, or something crazy like that. So, and that's the whole thing. And I knew, and there were also some people that you just had to I really believed in it. There were times that it was a bit scary, but there were some vendors that I use a lot. I'm a big fan, just like the neighborhood aspect. I like to use the smaller vendors and the little guys because I'm a little guy. But sometimes it's smarter economically to use the big ones. But there were 2 or 3 that were not as friendly as they could have been because, money was tight. I couldn't pay my bills on time, but I could break them out. I said, look, Nellie's is going to be really successful. And 1 or 2, well, basically 1, possibly 2, were very unfriendly. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to do any of it. I'm going to find this money. Here's your money. That's what you're focused on. I am never going to do business with you again. And they have come back countless times. Hey, you know what? I know that happened 9 years ago. I'm like, hey, I'm good. I've got it all figured out. I'll definitely call you when I need you. So that was another thing that I took a risk on, and it worked out in my favor of using vendors and people that I could trust and kind of work with. It was all a learning experience.
Good lesson for vendors too. I mean, that's not look. I mean, you got to look at the big picture and have a long. But
it's a scary industry too, because if that whole group, so if in Boston, not only the restaurants can't open, but then all of those vendors that feed those restaurants, they're not getting paid. Yeah. So it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it's a tough business, man. I admire every one of you guys and gals that I speak to and interview for this, and just
right.
I tip my hat. And dude, I got to tell you, man, I mean, we're a small business too. You probably know. I mean, there's still just 5 of us here, and we always have been. And we're so, proud to serve. I mean, that's that's what we do, independent restaurants, and I love it. I love the stories y'all have. I love the work ethic you have, the risk and reward, and just the hustle and the grit and the determination and the awesome, shrewd, good business decisions like buying your building, man. So I really, really, you have a very infectious story and personality, and your passion for what you do comes out, man. And it's no surprise that with no experience, even working in restaurants, you figured this out, Doug. So, just thank you for taking your time, and thank you for sharing your story. And
sure,
I really, really appreciate it, man.
Sure. Let me tell you one other thing that I think is absolutely fascinating. It's very telling. Is that in the 11 years, we've won the best of in D.C. And this is D.C., Maryland, Virginia. The population is about 6 million people. And so in the Washingtonian, we were named top 50 restaurants like 2 or 3 times in a row. In the city paper, local paper, best sports bar, best gay bar, best trivia night, best roof deck, best whatever. In the Post, they have certain sections, the same thing, best gay bar, best sports bar, best place to meet people, best whatever. And then the local, like MW or the Blade, the same categories. One of them, can't remember which one, I think City Paper, we won most best of. They had some, they all have ridiculous amounts, but let's say like 100 best ofs. We won like 21 of them.
Oh my God.
It was crazy. That never happened before. So to me, just to peel back, there is no restaurant in the nation that wins best gay bar and best sports bar ever.
Yeah, right.
Hello. So that in itself is a testament to the creativity, the hard work, all this stuff with what goes on with Nellie's. And my last would be with Schedule Fly and anything else. That's another thing I learned. I'm not very tech savvy and all that sort of thing. We would do handwritten, schedules, notes to each other, all that. And that within 5 years of evolving into, obviously the Google and how we would do manager meeting notes, Schedule Fly was a godsend. All of these things totally helped to the volume that we do today. Was another learning curve that wouldn't have happened if we didn't have people like you guys helping us.
Oh, man, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Well, you've been a long-time customer. And really appreciate
Thank God.
it very much. Yeah, man. Well, here's to another 11 years for both of us, right?
Okay, very good.
Well,
all right.
That's incredibly impressive, what
Yeah.
y'all done. So keep it up, man. It's a great story, and it's obviously a great business. I am 100%, next time I'm in D.C., I'm there. I'm going to come hang out at Nellie's for sure. No
very
question.
good.
All right, man.
All right.
I tell your staff, thank you from all of us, and I appreciate it, Doug. I'll let you get back to your day, but I appreciate the time, and everybody that listened will enjoy this very much.
Okay, very good. Talk to you later.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.